All right, so get ready, because today we're going deep, deep down into something kind of dark.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, we're talking about the Child's Play franchise,
Yep.
all the movies, and we even have some excerpts from the TV series to talk about.
Nice.
Really going to unpack how this killer doll has stayed relevant for decades.
Decades, yeah.
Is it the horror,
Mm.
the humor? What are you most curious about when it comes to Chucky?
Well, I think one of the most fascinating things about the Child's Play franchise is it's not your typical slasher.
Yep.
It's evolved over time, reflecting the different trends in horror, but also tapping into, like, deeper themes, fear technology, even a little bit of social commentary.
Yeah, okay, let's go all the way back to the beginning then, 1988's Child's Play.
Okay.
For anyone who hasn't seen it. The very basic premise is that a serial killer uses a voodoo ritual to transfer his soul into a good guy doll.
Right.
And then, bam, Chucky's born.
Yep.
But he's not just any killer doll.
No, not at all. And I think that voodoo element is really key because it's not just like a toy that's malfunctioning. Right.
Chucky literally has the mind of a serial killer.
Yeah.
And that blend of psychological thriller and supernatural horror is what set that original apart. Plus, you have that classic horror trope.
Oh, yeah.
Of adults not believing Andy when he says his doll is alive.
Yes.
And murderous.
Oh my gosh, it's like the adults never learn in these movies.
Never.
But I think that's part of the reason why we love them.
Absolutely.
Right, because it just amps up the tension so much.
It isolates Andy.
Yeah.
And it forces him to confront this terrifying situation on his own. And that really becomes like a recurring theme throughout the whole franchise.
Oh, interesting.
Innocence lost and the struggle to be believed.
Okay, so we've got this terrifying foundation with the first film, but then Child's Play 2 comes along in 1990.
Yeah.
And it cranks up the gore.
Yes.
And the dark humor. It feels like Chucky really leaned into his, like, slasher status in this one. He did, and it really pushes the boundaries in terms of violence. But what I think is also interesting is how they developed Andy's character in the sequel.
Yeah.
He's dealing with the trauma from the first film. And that adds this whole other layer of psychological complexity to his story.
Okay, and then Child's Play 3, we've aged Andy up now.
Yes.
Sent him off to military school.
Right.
But guess what? Chucky finds him.
He always does.
I mean, this doll seriously holds a grudge.
He does. This one might not be the most critically acclaimed, but it shows how far Chucky's willing to go for revenge.
Yep.
And that military school setting adds a new dynamic to the chase.
Yeah.
We're starting to see those comedic elements kind of become more prominent, too, almost foreshadowing where the franchise goes next.
Ooh, okay, so then things take a turn.
A big turn.
Bride of Chucky, 1998, we're introduced to Tiffany,
Yes.
Chucky's equally twisted soulmate.
Right.
And now we're dealing with a murderous couple.
We are.
So this is where the horror comedy really kicks in.
Bride of Chucky is such a game changer because it fully embraces that humor, and you get this darkly comedic dynamic between the two of them. They're both sadistic killers, but there's this twisted love story there, which was totally unexpected and resonated so well with the fans.
Totally. Then we've got Seed of Chucky, 2004.
Okay.
Which took that whole outrageous thing to a whole other level.
It did.
A killer doll having a kid.
I know. This one is definitely the most divisive in the franchise. Some fans loved it.
Yeah.
Others felt it strayed too far from the series' roots.
Interesting.
But what's interesting is that it introduces Glenn and Glenda, Chucky and Tiffany's child,
right,
who struggles with their gender identity.
Yeah, that was pretty unexpected for a horror movie in 2004.
It was, and it added this layer of social commentary that you don't often see in slasher films.
Not at all.
You could argue that Seed of Chucky, while being intentionally over the top, was also trying to push some boundaries in terms of representation.
So after all that camp, I was relieved when Curse of Chucky in 2013 brought things back to a darker, more psychological horror vibe.
Yeah. Curse of Chucky was a smart move.
Yeah.
Because it reminded audiences that Chucky is at his core, a really terrifying entity.
Yeah.
And it introduces Nika, who uses a wheelchair.
Right.
And that adds this whole other layer of vulnerability and suspense because Chucky is preying on someone who's already facing challenges,
Right.
which really amps up the horror.
And in The Cult of Chucky, 2017 just blows everything wide open.
Yes.
Chucky figures out how to split his soul into multiple dolls.
Multiple Chuckies.
Talk about a nightmare scenario.
That's where it really dives deep into psychological horror.
Yeah.
Because Nika's trapped in a psychiatric ward battling multiple Chuckies, and you start to question what's real and what's not.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredibly unsettling,
Yeah.
but also brilliant in terms of how it plays with the audience.
So we've got these 7 films, each kind of building on the last in terms of the gore, the humor, the psychological torment, and then, bam, a reboot in 2019.
A reboot. What was the thinking there?
Well, the 2019 reboot was clearly aimed at a new generation.
Okay.
It reimagines Chucky as an AI doll that goes haywire. So instead of supernatural possession, you have this technological threat.
Interesting.
It definitely divided fans,
I bet.
but it's a very modern take on that killer doll concept,
Yeah.
reflecting our current anxieties about AI.
Okay, but let's be honest. The Chucky TV series is where it's at right now.
Yes.
It brings back these familiar characters like Andy and Tiffany, introduces new ones, and just keeps the story going.
It does.
How are they doing it?
I think the TV series is such a success because it balances that nostalgia with fresh storytelling.
Okay.
It gives longtime fans what they want, those iconic characters, that signature dark humor. But it also explores new themes like bullying and LGBTQ plus identity through the character of Jake.
Plus, the format just allows for more character development,
Yeah.
which has really resonated with viewers.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the chilling psychological thriller of the original all the way to the over-the-top Bride of Chucky.
Yeah.
And those more complex storylines that we're seeing in the TV series.
Right.
It's amazing how this franchise has stayed relevant for so long.
It is.
But I think it's time to go a little bit beyond the plot summaries.
Okay.
What are the deeper themes running through all of this?
Yeah.
What's the real story the Child's Play franchise is telling us?
That's where things get really interesting. We've talked about Chucky the killer, but what about Chucky the character? How has he evolved over time?
Yeah.
And what does his enduring appeal say about us, the audience?
Ooh, okay. I am all ears. Let's dive into that right after this. All right, so we've talked about how the Child's Play franchise is about way more than just a killer doll running around.
Oh, yeah, way more.
There's something else going on there, right?
Absolutely. And I think what's so fascinating is how Chucky himself has evolved.
Yeah.
You know, he goes from this purely terrifying, almost demonic figure in those early films
Right.
to something a little more complex.
Yeah, he's definitely got a sense of humor about him now.
He does.
And some of those one-liners,
Oh, yeah.
they're iconic, even though they're super creepy.
I know.
Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play.
I know.
Like, how can you not laugh?
You have to. But it is creepy.
But that dark humor is such a big part of his appeal.
It is.
You know, it balances out the horror,
Mhm.
makes him a much more engaging character.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what's going on in his head.
Yes.
Like, besides wanting to get out of that doll body, what's his deal?
Well, think about some of the recurring themes that we see throughout the franchise.
Okay.
Innocence lost, family trauma,
Yeah.
vengeance.
Right.
A lot of times Chucky targets people who are already vulnerable in some way,
That's true.
and he exploits their fears
Yeah.
and insecurities.
Like Andy.
Nike, Jake, in the TV series,
Right.
they've all been through some rough stuff.
They have. And Chucky, in this twisted way,
Yeah.
kind of reflects their pain.
Oh, wow.
He becomes almost like a manifestation of their darkest impulses.
Interesting.
Like the embodiment of everything they're trying to suppress.
So he's not just a killer doll. He's like a symbol of something much deeper.
Exactly.
Whoa. That's deep for a slasher franchise.
I know, right? And that's part of the reason why I think he continues to resonate with audiences.
Yeah.
He taps into those primal fears, our anxieties about technology,
Yeah.
even our fascination with the taboo.
Yeah.
I mean, he's this unassuming little doll,
Right.
but he represents something much darker and more complex.
It's true. And there's also this interesting dynamic, I think,
yeah.
between Chucky and the humans that he interacts with.
Right.
Because it's not always clear who's manipulating who.
It's not, and I think a great example of that is Tiffany. In Bride of Chucky, you know, she's initially drawn to his darkness, but as their relationship progresses, she starts to challenge him, question his motives.
Interesting.
And you see that in the TV series, too, with Jake,
Yeah.
who starts out under Chucky's influence,
Right.
but eventually finds the strength to fight back.
It's like they're drawn to that darkness in each other.
They are.
But the human characters always have that capacity for growth and change.
Yes.
Which Chucky trapped in the doll body doesn't have.
Exactly. And that's another key theme that runs throughout the franchise, I think.
Okay.
Choice. You know, the human characters, despite all their flaws and vulnerabilities, they can choose a different path.
Yeah.
Resist his influence. But Chucky, he's stuck.
He's stuck.
In this cycle of violence and revenge forever, trying to reclaim what he's lost.
So even though he's the villain,
Yeah.
there's a part of him that's almost tragic.
You could definitely say that.
Wow.
He's both terrifying and pathetic. You know, we can be horrified by his actions, but also recognize that twisted humanity that drives him.
Right.
He's a cautionary tale, I think. A reminder of what can happen when we give in to those darkest impulses.
Wow, this is getting deep. I never thought I'd be feeling sorry for a killer doll.
But that's the brilliance of the franchise.
Yeah.
It goes beyond those cheap scares, you know?
Right.
And it really forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world that we live in.
All right, so we've talked about his evolution as a character.
Yeah.
All the deeper themes.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean?
Right.
Why are we still so fascinated with this killer doll after all these years?
Right.
Why do we keep coming back for more?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And there's no easy answer, but I think it has something to do with the way that Chucky reflects our anxieties and our fears.
Hold on. Are you saying there's a little Chucky in all of us?
Not literally, of course.
Okay, good.
But we are drawn to horror because it allows us to confront our fears.
Right.
But in a safe environment, we can experience that thrill of danger and violence without actually being in harm's way. It's a form of catharsis.
So Chucky, with all his over-the-top violence and his dark humor, provides that release.
Exactly.
We're exercising our demons through him.
He allows us to explore those boundaries of what's acceptable, laugh at the absurdity of it all, and maybe learn something about ourselves in the process.
And we can be terrified and entertained at the same time.
Yes.
That is a fascinating way to look at it.
It is.
So it's like he's holding up this mirror to society, showing us this dark underbelly of human nature, but in a way that's disturbing.
Yes.
But also oddly compelling.
It is. And don't forget the franchise's exploration of technology.
Oh, that's right.
You know, from the voodoo magic of the original to the AI-driven Chucky of the reboot.
Yeah.
There's always been this underlying commentary on our relationship with technology.
Right.
And how it can be both beneficial and dangerous.
It's like a cautionary tale.
It is.
Wrapped in a slasher flick.
Exactly.
We're laughing at Chucky's antics, but maybe also recognizing a little bit of ourselves in his obsession with control.
Yes.
And his willingness to cross any line.
Absolutely.
To get what he wants.
And that's why I think the franchise, for all its gore and dark humor, actually has something profound to say about the human condition.
All right, so we've covered the evolution of the franchise.
Right.
The complexity of Chucky as a character. The deeper themes that the films explore. But what does it all mean for the future?
Right.
Can Chucky keep evolving? Can he stay relevant in a world that's constantly changing?
I believe he can.
You do?
As long as we have fears to exploit, anxieties to explore, and a fascination with that dark side of human nature, there will always be a place for Chucky. He's a survivor.
He is.
And he's proven time and time again that he can adapt.
So he's not going away anytime soon?
Not at all.
But what about us,
Well,
the viewers? What should we be looking for as we continue to explore the Child's Play universe?
I think the key is to watch with an open mind.
Okay.
You know, appreciate the different layers of the franchise.
Yeah.
Don't just focus on the scares or the laughs.
Okay.
Pay attention to the characters, the themes, the social commentary.
Right.
There's always something new to discover, something to make you think, something to make you question.
That's a good point. So for all of you deep divers out there, if you haven't already explored the Child's Play franchise,
I
highly recommend giving it a shot.
Do it.
You might be surprised by what you find.
You will.
About the films, about Chucky, maybe even about yourself.
And if you're already a fan, I encourage you to revisit it.
Ooh, okay.
With fresh eyes, pay attention to that evolution of Chucky, the recurring themes, the social commentary. There's always something new to uncover. Something to make you think, something to make you scream.
Until next time, deep divers, stay curious, stay informed, and maybe sleep with one eye open just in case. Okay, so We've talked about Chucky's evolution
Yeah.
and the deeper themes
Yeah.
running through the franchise.
Right.
But, like, what's the takeaway here?
Yeah.
Why are we still so fascinated
Right.
by this killer doll after all these years?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is.
And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
But I think part of it has to do with the way that Chucky reflects our own anxieties and fears.
So are you saying, like, there's a little bit of Chucky in all of us?
Not literally.
Okay.
But I think we're drawn to horror because it lets us confront our fears.
Right.
But in a safe way,
Mhm.
we get to experience that thrill of danger and the violence without actually being in harm's way.
It's like a safe space to be scared.
It is. It's a form of catharsis.
So Chucky with all the over-the-top violence and the dark humor.
Right.
That's what provides the release.
I think so.
We're like exorcising our demons through him.
Exactly. And he lets us explore those boundaries of what's acceptable.
Okay.
And laugh at the absurdity of it all.
Yeah.
And maybe even learn a little something about ourselves
Interesting.
along the way.
So it's like he's holding up this mirror to society, showing us the darkest parts of human nature. But it's disturbing, but it's also kind of compelling.
It is. It is. And you can't forget about the technology aspect of the franchise, too.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
From the voodoo magic of the original to the AI Chucky of the reboot.
Right.
There's always been this commentary on our relationship with technology.
Right.
And how it can be both good and bad.
Yeah, it's like a cautionary tale, but also a slasher film.
Exactly. And we're laughing at his antics, but also maybe recognizing a little bit of ourselves in that obsession with control.
Right. And willingness to do whatever it takes to get what he wants.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think this franchise, with all the gore and the dark humor, has something really profound to say.
It does. It really does.
About the human condition. There's a reason.
Yes.
This killer doll has resonated with audiences for decades.
Right. He taps into something primal.
Yeah.
Something we can't ignore.
I think you're right. Chucky's not just a scary doll.
Nope.
He reflects our deepest fears.
Absolutely.
Our anxieties about technology, our fascination with the dark side. It's like, even in a world full of progress and innovation, there are still shadows
lurking around every corner.
And maybe that's why we keep coming back.
Hey,
we need that reminder.
That jolt of fear.
That cathartic release.
Yeah. We need Chucky in all his twisted glory.
Right.
To show us the darkness in ourselves and the world that we live in.
Well, I think I need to go back and rewatch everything now.
You should.
With this whole new perspective.
Yes.
Looking for the deeper meanings.
Right.
Those anxieties.
Right.
The ways in which Chucky reflects, like, the best and worst of humanity.
It's all there.
So to everyone listening.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked out the Child's Play franchise.
Do it.
Now's the time.
It's time.
Don't just write it off as another slasher series.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it.
There is.
And for those of you who are already fans,
I
hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the Child's Play universe.
It's a wild ride.
So keep watching, keep questioning.
And keep that nightlight plugged in just in case.
That's it for our deep dive into the Child's Play franchise.
Wow.
Until next time, fellow deep divers, stay curious and keep exploring. Ha 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 ha!